What's going on, guys? This is DaWoblefet, and welcome to round 1 of the Players' Cup for North American qualifiers. Yeah, the Swiss rounds. That's a lot. That's a pretty big mouthful to say. But this is my Swiss round 1 of Players' Cup 4. I was playing against an opponent named Gilberto Borgos. Borgos? I don't know how to say people's names. I'm so sorry. Their screen name is GilVGC. And they have a team that you can see on your screen. Their team sheet, their open team sheet, was a Life Orb Spectrier, Sash Shifu, Magnetaleki, Standard Miracle Seed Rillaboom, a Togekiss that did not have Air Slash. It was Helping Hand and Yawn and had the Wakan Berry, so more of a redirector. Togekiss didn't have the option to max, and then pretty standard ground goals in Incineroar. So I have a few options in this matchup. But one of the biggest options that I wanted to choose was the not losing option. Again, I just want to emphasize that prior to this tournament in Players' Cup 3, I had gone 0-2, which was a double elimination, so I just was immediately out. And then in the Smogon VGC Tour, which was Series 9, I had gone 2-3, but my 2 wins were activity wins. So, not an especially impressive showing in the last few major tournaments. So I really just wanted to win. I wanted to win one game. That was my goal, to just win one game. And against this team, I felt like I had a few options. One of the options I thought was pretty good would be Registeel. Registeel is able to it matches up well against a lot of this team. Heavy Slam does a lot of damage to Spectrier. It'll do a lot to Togekiss. And if I get Body Press up, I can wall the Rillaboom and the Incineroar. And I can use Landorus to beat some of the other Pokemon that are going to be threatening to me. So I thought that Regieleki and Landorus and Registeel were a really good combination against him, also with Clefairy. I was kind of worried about trying to beat him down with Moltres because of his Regieleki. I didn't really know very much about it, and especially with the Togekiss being so support-oriented, I was worried about my Moltres potentially getting yawned, or getting blown up in some other way, like for example from a Helping Hand plus Max Electric from Regieleki, something like that. I was pretty scared of. So I wanted to try this Landorus mode out first, try to give some speed boost to Registeel, and win with Registeel in the end. So let's go ahead and get into it. So my opponent leads with their Spectrier and Togekiss, as I lead with my Clefairy and Landorus. So here, my opponent is basically doing the exact same thing that I'm doing. We both have similar options available to us. We can go for a setup move and follow me, but I don't feel so much inclined to go for a setup move because my Landorus kind of just kills all their Pokemon as it is. They have to switch an Incineroar in order to be able to prevent those knockouts. And so here I have the option of going for a Helping Hand plus a Max Airstream, and that will give me my speed boost. I was also calculating at this point. I calculated that it wasn't possible for Spectrier with Max Hyper Beam to knock out my Clefairy. It's Life Orb, I know that, and so Timid Life Orb is never able to knock out my Clefairy with a Max Hyper Beam. So I'm going to be able to guaranteed survive this. I can use Helping Hand, Max Airstream, and knock out his Togekiss, and then I'm going to be in a good spot. Now, in hindsight, I am going to be reflecting not only on my thoughts during the game itself, but also some hindsight. In hindsight, I think that this Helping Hand Max Flying should have been into the Spectrier. Spectrier dies to Helping Hand Max Flying. And so yeah, I think I should have just targeted it and just attempted to knock it out. The worst case scenario would have been something like a Max Guard plus Yawn. But they also have the option, since I'm going for the Helping Hand here, of doing something like a Max Strike plus Yawn, so comparably risky. But in any case, my opponent just decides to go for Helping Hand, so I'm like, okay, they're just going to go for the Max Ghost and my Clefairy, just knock it out turn 1, but I'm going to have the speed advantage after this, and they go for Max Strike. I'm like, okay, that's perfectly fine, that's fine. My Clefairy survives this, and then next turn I can go for a, why did my Clefairy die? Why did it die? That's not good. And that's what I was thinking to myself at the time. I'm not saying that in post-commentary, but I remember thinking to myself like, oh, that is so bad. That is not good at all. Now I'm super far behind. I really was counting on my Clefairy either surviving that attack, or getting a speed boost. I thought I could like forced my opponent's hand, but for some reason it knocked out. And I'm like, what the heck? That doesn't make any sense. And so I'm sitting there thinking about what happened, and I'm just like, oh, gosh darn it, what went wrong? And then I check, and I figure out, oh, it's modest. It's modest Spectrier, and it got a low roll. So that's good information. I know my opponent is modest Spectrier. I didn't bring my own Spectrier, so I can't immediately take advantage of that, but that could potentially be something that I could take advantage of in a game 2 or 3. Because now I know that my Spectrier is faster than theirs, because of that damage it indicates to me that they're modest. So I sent out my Regieleki to hopefully outspeed the Spectrier. Unfortunately, they sent out their own Regieleki, and I'm like, ah, well, great, because now they basically are going to do the exact same thing to me. But I'm like, okay, well, this still isn't so bad, because I can do, like, Protect Max Airstream, and it's basically the same idea. I can put myself faster than the Spectrier. The Regieleki isn't pressuring my Lando at all, so he's got to go for Max Ghost in order to be able to do any sort of significant damage to my Lando. So I decide, all right, I'm just going to go for the Max flying here. They go for Electro, and I'm like, perfect, that's just fine. And then they go for Max Strike, and I'm like, oh, that makes a lot of sense, because Electro Weapon Max Strike would kill my Aleki. As you can see, it does 50% through Protect, an insane amount of damage, so that easily would have knocked me out with the Electro Web chip. And so I'm now able to go for Max Flying into the Spectrier, do a lot of damage, and then I realized to myself afterwards, I'm like, oh wait, Max Flying does a ton of damage to the Spectre. I didn't expect it to do that much damage for some reason. I expected it to take less. And so now I'm kicking myself for not going for the Helping Hand Airstream turn 1. And now I'm in big trouble because the Regieleki is just going to knock me out. I needed my Regieleki in order to be able to outspeed and knock out the Spectre, because at this point, I can't stop him from going for the max, for the last Max Strike. And so I'm like, okay, forget it. At this point, I don't need any more Max Airstreams. They're just going to go for Max Strike again into the Regieleki. I'm just going to cut my losses and try to switch out. Or excuse me, not try to switch out. I'm just going to knock out the Regieleki rather than going for Max Airstream just for him to drop my speed again. There's no point. I need to make sure that I actually survive this. So I decide, okay, I'm going to go ahead and switch into my Registeel so that way I can take the Max Normal really well. Because I figured that was heading my way. Or, you know, Thunderbolt. I need my Regieleki for later, because I'm planning on using it to outspeed the Spectre. So the Spectre goes for Max Guard, and I'm like, yes, this is perfect. I'm getting no damage from this. They go for Volt Switch, and I'm like, oh man, if I got for Max Airstream! And so, I end up still being at a speed disadvantage now, and that's not good. And their last position winners are Sheaf, and I'm like, oh gosh darn it, that would have been really good to Airstream. Quake is going to be nice here because I'm going to give my Registeel a special defense boost, but it's not good. Both of my opponent's Pokemon are now faster than mine. Urshifu can just knock out my Landorus, especially since it's out of Dynamax. And I can't switch in my Regieleki on that slot. He has a guaranteed Surging Strikes in that slot if he wants to take it. He also, if he wants to, can go for Close Combat into my Registeel. And that's going to do a ton of damage. It won't knock it out, but if he wants to, he can double my Registeel. And that's not good. However, I don't expect him to try to double the Registeel, because if he tries to double Registeel, then my Landorus can knock out both with a Rock Slide. And that would be really bad for my opponent. So, at this point, I need to just start taking KOs, and it doesn't really matter which one I take, because the Regieleki is going to come in later, and that's just terrible for me. And I can't stop the Urshifu right now. Moreover, the Spectre is itself at +1 special attack, which is a non-trivial amount. I actually don't know if that knocks out Landorus. It probably doesn't, since I did go for Max Quake, but I still would have much rather gone for Max Flying there than I've just gone for Rock Slide. So Shadow Ball does a massive amount of damage into my Registeel. That's not good. Surging Strike comes out, and I'm like, oh, maybe he doubled into the Registeel. That'd be awesome. But no. Attacks the Landorus. The Landorus is going down for sure. Doesn't even take 3 hits. So I am going to take out the Spectre. But at this point, it is not looking good. My opponent, since I'm so slow on my Regieleki, is almost certainly going to be able to just outspeed with their own Regieleki and get a clean knockout. And I thought at this point, pretty much all hope is lost. But then I thought to myself a little bit, I'm like, okay, well, wait a minute. My opponent doesn't know that I'm a slow Regieleki. They don't really have any information that would indicate one way or another. You couldn't tell just from the max Hyper Beam damage that I was a Regieleki, you wouldn't be able to just tell that. I mean, I did go into the yellow, but I mean, it could be in roll, and I only have just a little bit of HP, so I don't have that much special defense on my Regieleki, so there wouldn't necessarily be an indicator there, so maybe I can do a bluff. If I can pull off a bluff with my Regieleki, if I can perhaps potentially beta protect with his Urshifu, and then the Regieleki on their side goes for Electro Web or something like that, then maybe I have a shot. And so I'm like, okay, the only way I can possibly win this is if the Urshifu goes for Protect, and I somehow manage to knock out this Regieleki, and he doesn't knock out either of my Pokemon. It's not very likely for any of those things to happen, but at this point, I've got to just hope for something good to happen. I mean, all they have to do really is just attack with their Regieleki and attack with their Urshifu, and I can't win. But I decided to go for Electro Web here because it also covers the Urshifu actually attacking if the Regieleki decides to attack the other slot. If the Urshifu does go for the Protect, I'm like, oh, there's no way, dude. There's no way. A Thunderbolt comes out, but it goes into my Regieleki, and it just knocks me out. Because Regieleki is a strong Pokemon. So that's not good. But I do get to use the Body Press onto the Regieleki, and I do get to check the damage there. And it's also very interesting. The Registeel's Body Press did under half to Regieleki. And I'm like, that doesn't seem right. I'm pretty sure it's supposed to do, like, I'm pretty sure +2 Body Press is supposed to kill. And if that did under half, that means that +2 Body Press would kill the Regieleki. I'm like, well, what the heck? What's wrong here? I'm like, I actually went into my summary screen to check my defense, just to make sure that I was the right spread, and I was the right spread. Got the right amount of defense, and so I'm like, okay, well, I guess that just means this Regieleki is really bulky. And so I'm sitting there, like, calculating it out, and then I figured that out. The Regieleki is just about as bulky as my Regieleki is. It's one of those that can also survive Surging Strikes. It's one of those that can, survive Grassy Glide, things like that. So, I know that this Regieleki is bulkier than my own, or is as bulky as my own, basically. And so I'm like, oh, I wonder, they're probably basically just the same Regieleki, but he has a little bit more speed than I do. And I'm like, oh, well, that's just great, That's about how it goes, right? Where they just have a little bit more speed than you do. And so that game was not great for me. I think I made a couple key misplays, but I don't remember at the time of how much I was reflecting on those misplays. I think I was more thinking about what to do with the information that I gained. So one of the most important things that I gained was I know that he's modest Spectrier now. So I know that my Spectrier will be able to outspeed them and go for a Snarl, go for a Shadow Ball, things of that nature, in order to be able to mess with them. And so that's very positive for me. I also know his Regieleki is bulky, which ends up actually being a little bit worse for me relative to anything else. But it might come up potentially with some speed interactions. Maybe not, but could, I guess. I also know that my Registeel isn't very good. My Registeel, I was expecting them to bring Rillaboom, at least, but they didn't bring Rillaboom, and they didn't bring Incineroar either. So they brought 4 Pokemon that are not, they're all pretty decent versus Registeel. Registeel can beat any one of them, but it doesn't beat them very quickly, and that's a big deal. I'm not going to be able to beat them by Registeel. I can't Iron Defense up. I don't have a lot of pressure with Registeel. Registeel needs to be swapped out for something else. So I swap it out this time for my Spectrier, knowing that my Spectrier is a little bit safer now, thanks to the knowledge I gained from Game 1. So I get a really, really great lead into this Game 2. So my opponent is pretty well locked down of a lot of options. They don't have much that they can switch into that covers a lot of this either. If they want to stay with their Spectrier, they basically have to max. They can go for something like a Helping Hand, Shadow Ball into my Spectrier, and that would knock it out, but they take a lot of damage in return, so that wouldn't be good. So the Spectrier kind of has to max if it wants to stay in. The Togekiss isn't really threatened much, which is very good. So the Spectrier here is not in a good spot. It can only KO one Pokemon. It can either knock out my Spectrier, or it can knock out my Regieleki. If they knock out my Spectrier, that my Regieleki is going to be able to Thunderbolt the Togekiss the next turn and do a lot of damage. They're always going to be at -1, so if they go for a Max Strike into my other guy, if they go for the Max Strike into my Regieleki, then I get Lando the next turn. Lando is faster than my Spectrier now. I can go for Max Airstream into the Togekiss, knock it out, and then go for Shadow Ball into the Spectrier, which at this point is only going to be a +0. So I was very happy with this lead. Felt like it covered a lot of options. And my opponent just goes straight for the Helping Hand. I think the Helping Hand was a little bit unnecessary. I'm pretty sure you don't need Helping Hand in order to be able to knock out my Spectrier. Maybe I'm mistaken. But it is Life Orb and it is modest. Nevertheless, that basically means that I know for sure only one of my Mons is going down. So one of my Mons is going to go down, but I've greatly limited their max. They go for Max Phantasm into my Spectre, and I'm perfectly fine with that. Because now my opponent is in a really tough spot. My Spectre has fallen in one turn, but it's done basically all that I need it to do. Now the board is set up perfectly for Landorus. Landorus is going to be able to come in and take very quick knockouts. I've got Clefairy in the back as well. Clefairy is going to be able to support my Landorus, be able to support my Regieleki. I need to be careful. I can't afford to have, for example, my Regieleki faint to anything. I really don't want my Regieleki to take any damage because I may need it later for the Urshifu. I may need to be able to take a hit. But this is about like the best position you can ask for with Regieleki. Now I can go, like I say, just straight for Thunderbolt and Max Airstream, and my opponent has very little that they can do to cover this. If they brought the same Pokemon that they did in Game 1, they would have both Urshifu and Regieleki in the back. And both of those are awful here. Neither wants to switch in on either of these attacks. My opponent basically just has to take this. They can max guard with their Spectre, sure, but it doesn't really help them that much. Next turn, if they, for example, go into their Shifu, I still have the pressure of Electro Web or Volt Switch, Max Airstream. Nothing really changes, so I'm definitely in the driver's seat here, even after losing Pokemon turn 1 because of the superior board advantage that I have right now. Landorus maxing is going to, like I say, severely weaken my opponent. If I get a speed boost on this Landorus, then I'm going to steamroll away with this game. My opponent decides not to do anything, and so I just take 2 knockouts, which is very nice. And so at this point also, I'm pretty confident that if they decide to do that play, they probably don't have their Incineroar in the back. Incineroar would definitely have been switching in there if that was the case. I could have handled the Incineroar switching in, but it would have been probably bad. Max Ghost into my Aleki would have been not good. But thankfully they didn't do that. And now I just have to wait to see what the remaining 2 Pokemon are. Like I say, if it's Regieleki and Urshifu, then I'm in a really good spot. They can't max anymore. Regieleki, as we saw from the open team sheet, does not have any moves that can hit Landorus. So at this point, I have a very safe double target into the Urshifu. I don't even need to click Electro Web. I can just go for Thunderbolt. The Regieleki can't knock me out with anything. Even though I have a defense drop on my Regieleki, Aqua Jet plus Thunderbolt probably won't knock me out. And even if it does, it won't knock me out quickly enough. They have to basically go for a Protect there. But because my Landorus has only used 1 turn of Max, I would get 2 Max Airstreams off. And so my opponent has basically no way of winning at this point. Thunderbolt into Regieleki does indicate that it would have knocked me out with the Aqua Jet damage. Which is nice, because since my opponent didn't go for Aqua Jet, that means they don't get to see my last Pokemon, which in this case was Clefairy. And Clefairy wouldn't have really been that good here in the late game. Registeel would have been okay. It would have been fine. I don't really think I would have wanted Moltres here. Yeah, I definitely wouldn't have wanted Moltres here, but it doesn't really matter because the Urshifu has gone down. There's nothing my opponent can do anymore to win this game. And so I'm thinking to myself, all right, I can just go for Protect Max Quake and just win the game. But do I have to do it that way? I'm curious a little bit more about this Regieleki's bulk. I'm gonna see if I can get another damage roll on it, and see if I can learn anything else. I know it's bulky because of the body press damage, but I want to see another damage roll against it. Now, in fairness, this also gives him a damage roll. He gets to see max airstream into Regieleki, but he also saw the max quake roll into his Urshifu that didn't trigger a focus sash. So he already saw a damage roll from me, so he could take an educated guess as to what my Landorus is. Like if he wanted to guess if I was Adamant or Jolly or something like that. And so this just gives me another roll onto the Regieleki. Gives me another opportunity to gauge what its relative damage is, and I'm not going to reveal my last Pokemon for that, so that's a pretty decent trade for me. So now I'm at this point, my opponent definitely cannot win. I'm just checking to see what the damage is versus the Lecky, just so I can understand that better. And I just don't want to self Earthquake, because if they protect, I'd reveal my final Pokemon, and that would be really embarrassing. So I might just go for Fly, because I don't have anything better to do, and Thunderbolt knocks out the Regieleki. So that adjustment was okay. It worked out really well because my opponent didn't lead their Aleki, though. If my opponent leads Regieleki in the next game, I am going to be in big trouble. If my opponent leads their Regieleki, that would basically shut down. They basically could just do the same thing to me that I did to them. Like they could lead Aleki Spectre, and they would do the exact same thing to me that I just did to them. And that's not good. I can't afford to let them do that, so I'm not going to lead the same thing this game. I can't afford to do that. But if I do think that they are going to lead with their Aleki, because of how good it would be against mites, like what I just did, and because of that, that makes me inclined to want to lead with my Landorus again. My opponent has not brought their Incineroar or their Rillaboom, both times this set either. Which is important to keep in mind for the end game. It means that, again, I don't need Registeel. So I can just bring my Spectre in the back, and that will help me against a potential late game Urshifu. It'll help me against potential late game Spectre, because I'm going to be able to knock it out with Shadow Ball, knowing that I'm faster than it. Whereas Registeel is slower than everything, and so won't do very well. And so I'm hoping to see a Regieleki here as a lead, because then my Landorus will be in such a strong, advantageous position. But my opponent actually switches it up again, and they lead with Urshifu and Rillaboom. And this really catches me off guard, because not only is this the first time Rillaboom was brought to the set, it was actually brought as a lead. That was really strange to me. I did not expect that. And now I'm kind of in a pickle. My opponent, it's not like the end of the world, but my opponent has a free Fake Out plus Surging Strikes on my Landorus, and that's going to do a lot of damage. I do have Friend Guard, so I won't die or anything to this, but it will mean that after Clefairy goes down, I'm going to be in KO range of Grassy Glide Aqua Jet, and I really can't do too much about that. My opponent can also just straight up knock out my Clefairy on turn 1 with something like a Surging Strikes and Wood Hammer, and that's not good either. My Clefairy would go down, and I would get a speed boost on my Landorus, which is good. But I don't really want to switch into either of my Pokemon in the back either, so yeah, a Fake Out here is pretty bad. I'm not in the best of spots for sure, especially since I don't have the Dynamax very early. I'm pretty obligated to Dynamax with this lead. I'm not trying to Swords Dance. Swords Dance doesn't get me anywhere. I don't need the extra damage right now. I need the speed boost. And by Dynamaxing though, now my opponent has the ability to counter Dynamax in the late game. Still, my opponent really only has a few options for their Dynamax. One of them is potentially Rillaboom, but Rillaboom's stayed on the field, so it's at -1. Not very likely to want to Dynamax. It really wants to have those Grassy Glides for later, I think. And so I go for Follow Me, and so my opponent doesn't actually opt for Fake Out, which I'm honestly happy to see. It means I avoid the damage on Landorus. There's actually a Grassy Glide that goes into Clefairy, and I'm thinking to myself, that is misplay, because this combination attack will not knock out my Clefairy. And I thought to myself, oh, they thought that I was going to go for the max flying into the Rillaboom. They thought I was just going to knock out Rillaboom. But they misjudged my the priority, so to speak, of the Pokemon I want to knock out. I really want to do some damage to this Urshifu. Rillaboom being around is annoying, but not the end of the world, especially since I've still got Intimidate on it. And so I'm able to not lose my Clefairy, which is really nice. My opponent now has a few options available to them. They really don't want to go for the Grassy Glide, because going for Grassy Glide and then getting knocked out by Landorus is not really something that you want to do. You expect Urshifu to go down here, so Urshifu can either switch into something, and anything that switches in is going to take a lot of damage. I don't think it's Incineroar. My opponent hasn't brought Incineroar yet, and it makes a decent amount of sense to switch Rillaboom to Incineroar on turn 1 if you expect him to do that, or maybe maybe switch Rillaboom to Incineroar and protect, switch Urshifu to Incineroar and protect Rillaboom, and then you can do like Fake Out and stuff. But it doesn't seem very likely that they've got that, so I think they're probably just gonna try to sack Urshifu, try to get some damage down. They're just gonna go for like Aqua Jet and Wood Hammer. So I'm going to switch out my Clefairy into Spectre, and I'm going to go for Max Airstream into Urshifu, except I time out! And so I'm using Max Quake here, and that is not good. I really wanted to Max Airstream, so that way my Spectre can outspeed this next Pokemon. And so this is just terrible, especially since I just timed out. This Max Quake is a 50-50. It could attack either the Urshifu or the Rillaboom, and I sigh with relief when I hit the Urshifu. That was a huge misplay. I talked too long on my moves, and if that Max Quake had gone into the Rillaboom, this game probably would have been over, because I needed the KO there, because I need to be able to damage the next Pokemon that comes in. I need damage on the next Pokemon that comes in, excuse me. And so it's not great. I wish I had used Airstream, but I didn't click it quickly enough. Now my Spectre has +1 special defense, which is pretty irrelevant. If they go Regieleki, it's kind of nice, because then I can surely survive with Thunderbolt, but Thunderbolt plus Grassy Glide still KOs me. But then they go Togekiss, and I'm like, Togekiss? You went Togekiss? I'm like, okay, well, maybe it makes sense not to go Regieleki, because Regieleki would just die. So I guess that makes sense. But Togekiss? I'm like, all right, well, I guess they just want to follow me and then have Rillaboom put some damage on me, or maybe follow me and switch. Because right now they're not in a good spot at all. They're in a terrible position, and so my Punkos are helping out. I'm like, okay, they're just gonna take my Landorus with Wood Hammer, but they go for Grassy Glide again, and I'm like, why they keep going for Grassy Glide? But again, they keep respecting me going for the option of Max Fly into the Rillaboom slot, and that's not what I'm interested in doing. I don't need to knock out the Rillaboom. Moreover, I'm a little bit hesitant to try that because they've got Protect. I don't want to risk blowing my Max move into that because I don't need a Speed Boost anymore. After one Max Airstream, that's enough versus what they've got on the field right now. I just really want some damage down, so I take the Togekiss, and that's really good now. If my opponent's plastic Pokemon is the Regieleki, then they don't have a particularly great Max, and I have a very fast Spectre. I can go for Snarl if it is Regieleki, or it's special attack. I can go for Will-O-Wisp into the Rillaboom, try to win with Landorus, and also the Rillaboom is still stuck on the field. It hasn't switched out at all, and so it is permanently locked at -1. It's sat there the whole game, and they're going to be running out of grassy terrain turns pretty soon. We've used all 3 turns of my Dynamax, so we still have 2 left. But they're going to be running out pretty quickly. The Spectre coming in isn't great. Grassy Glide is going to be able to knock out my Landorus, and then after my Landorus is knocked out, it's not super good. I've got my Regieleki in the back at full. I think it's at full. I'm pretty sure it's at full. Yeah, it's at full. And so that's going to be good against the Spectre. But I don't really have much to hit the Rillaboom, so I've got to be careful here. I've got my Clefairy left still, too. The Rillaboom is going to be strong, but it can't knock out everything because it hasn't switched out. And so I'm just going to go for some damage on Spectre. Going to take a knockout there. I'm going to try to win by basically having more Pokemon than my opponent. I did not time out there. I did lock into Rock Slide. So I didn't make a mistake there, thankfully. But my opponent does Dynamax. They can't max their Rillaboom because then I would just knock out their Spectre, and then they really would lose because it'd be 4v1 and they wouldn't be able to KO all my Pokemon fast enough. But I'm like, okay, I'm just going to lose my Pokemon to Grassy Glide. But they Protect. And like, honestly, that one I don't understand. I really don't get that one. Like, even if I Shadow Ball the Rillaboom for some damage, you're maxing the Spectre. Like, I don't know. So I get a little bit more damage with Rock Slide. It ends up really not mattering that much. I didn't have anything better to do. I could have clicked Fly, I guess. Fly would have been a little bit better, but if they know how targeting works, they would have known that I was targeting the Spectre or the Rillaboom. I guess they just protected with Rillaboom, so it would be able to. It would know that. Yeah, it wouldn't matter because they couldn't spell protect. No matter how you slice it, that was a good turn for me. And now my opponent is in deep trouble because they just kept my Landorus alive, which is really bad for them. There's only one more turn of grassy terrain left, and they can't KO me anymore. They are in huge, huge, huge trouble. They basically just don't have a way of defeating me anymore because I'm just going to win on damage traits. Now, my plan here is to go into the Regieleki, but I also want to think about this very carefully because at this point I can win with Fly because my opponent has graciously decided not to knock out my Landorus. And also, by switching to my Clefairy, I guarantee that my Regieleki is going to be able to survive a Wood Hammer from this Rillaboom. There's no way that I can feint to this attack. So even though the Spectrier does go for a Max Guard here, which I think is like decently likely, the Rillaboom isn't able to knock out my Regieleki, which is important because if they don't knock out my Regieleki, then my Clefairy can go for Follow Me. If they do knock out my Clefairy, then they didn't do any damage to my Regieleki. Either way, I'm going to be able to get Landorus in safely out of grassy terrain, which means that the Grassy Glide is going to be unable to knock out my Rillaboom. And it also means that my opponent is going to take them a long, long time for them to actually kill me. Because even though I have Fly, they can always go for Protect, right? But because I have way more Pokemon than them, or not way more, but I have 2 Pokemon and they only have 1, that means that all I have to do is protect my Regieleki and go for Fly. They can't do any damage to me at all. And then next turn, I go for Fly and Thunderbolt into the Rillaboom. The Rillaboom will use Protect, but it doesn't matter. I have 2 Pokemon left. They only have 1. I can win on Timer. And so at this point, I'm playing to my win condition of Timer. Now, in one sense, this is kind of risky because my opponent, if I dodge Fly, they can knock out my Landorus with a Grassy Glide. However, again, the second they do that, the second they decide to dodge Fly, because that's what they can do, even if they do dodge Fly, I get a Thunderbolt off on them. So I get some good damage, and then I can protect, and I go over another Thunderbolt. And they're at -2 now, and they don't have any grassy terrain. So they'd have to crit my Regieleki in order to win on the damage trait. So I am leading by a pretty significant amount of health because of a misplay they made earlier in the game. Rather than having to have Regieleki try to win this basically on its own, I now have Landorus to help me out. And that's going to make it so I can just win with certainty. And so that all sounded like it was really smart, right? Yeah. So that's why I decided to attack with my Regieleki this turn instead of going for the Protect like I'm supposed to do. I honestly do not understand my past me's thought process. Why I would attack here instead of going for Protect. I'm supposed to attack here. Or I'm supposed to protect here. Because then I'm always winning on health. Now, granted, I can't actually die to this. A Wood Hammer outside of grassy terrain, well, it could kill me with a crit. But then I notice, oh yeah, Thunderbolt itself actually does quite a lot of damage to this Rillaboom. But I choke here. This is a really bad choke because now if this had gotten a critical hit on my Regieleki, it would have died. And then my opponent can basically do the exact same thing to me in reverse. They would be at a little bit lower HP, so maybe Rock Slide would have knocked them out. I don't think Earthquake would have knocked them out from there. I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, because I dealt so much damage with Thunderbolt, I didn't actually expect to do that much damage. I'm able to just knock out the Rillaboom with that second Thunderbolt and don't have to think about it too hard. So yeah, that was my round 1. Definitely a lot of misplays here. I think I played pretty poorly in game 1. I think I had a lot of different plays available to me that would have been better than the plays I actually made. I think in game 3 here, I think, with all due respect to my opponent, I think they made several misplays with their Rillaboom, expecting me to want to go after it, I think, when it just wasn't necessary for me to. The Rillaboom, they just played it in such a bizarre way that let me generate situations that I don't think should have been possible for me. But I, at this point, am very content, because you know what that means? That round 1 win means? That means I accomplished my goal. I actually won a game. And as strange as that might sound, that means I already met my goal for this tournament, and anything on top of that is icing on the cake. I actually won out, and I was so happy. I messaged one of my friends, and I said, I actually won a game! I won a game in an actual tournament! Yeah! And that was as silly as it might sound. It's just like, oh yeah, you won 1 game. Like, it doesn't mean anything. I mean, you could go 0-7 from here, but at least I won a game, and I was just so happy about that. I was so content. So that was my first round of Swiss. Good games to my opponent, and see you next time for round 2.